This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 274 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I have got a deep dive interview today with one of my most favourite fellow travellers, Neill. Now, Dale actually began working life as a teacher, but he's been a photographer, and a photography teacher for many, many decades now, and he's led photography tours to all parts of the globe. I met Dale probably about a decade ago. Initially, I think when we were both teaching courses at the UWA Extension program here, so the kind of local university public-facing courses. I was teaching blogging and he was teaching photography. And our paths have crossed in lots of different ways since. And every time I have had the absolute pleasure of hearing some of Dale's travel tales. He's both a master storyteller and also a very experienced and thoughtful traveller. Actually, if you're a long-time listener, you probably have heard some stories from Dale back in, I think, 2017 and 2019. But I actually think we could run a podcast for decades and still not cover all of Dale's stories. When I approached him to record this deep dive, he sent back a very long list of potential stories to tell, even though I tried to narrow down the criteria. I think we could record forever and ever. But in this episode, we have covered 4 really fabulous and fascinating experiences that Dale's had on his travels in Borneo, Greece, Turkey, and Vietnam. So let's start off our journey in Borneo.
This story started in about 1990-91, and I had an assistant and a PA in photography who was very adventurous, and she came to me and she said, "Dale, let's do something exciting. Let's go to Singapore and photograph orchids." And I looked at her and I said, I could not think of anything more boring. So off she went, and she came back a day or two later and she said, "How about then if we go to Borneo and photograph orangutans?" I said, "Now you're talking." So we made plans and we said we're going to do a recce run. So we flew to Singapore and then we flew to, this is Malaysian Borneo, and we got to Kota Kinabalu. And we looked around and we discovered that we needed to buy an orangutan license. And an orangutan license gives you the rights to photograph orangutans. So when we went and inquired at the government agency, they said, "No, you've got to go to this travel agent. They're our licensee." So we went over there and they said, "It will cost you $1,000 US for the license." Ooh, and I almost fainted. And they said, "Or an amateur license is $10. And I said, what's the difference? What's the difference? They said, "Well, with the professional license, the $1,000 license, you're allowed to use a tripod and a long lens."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Right. Do you know what?" I said, "I am an amateur. I will be using no tripod and no long lens." So I paid my $10. That's when the story became interesting. They said, "What are you planning to do?" And I said, "Well, we're going to go and do a recce run, and then maybe in 6 months or a year's time, I'm going to bring a tour back." And this young man said, "Look, wait here a moment. I'm going to go and talk to my boss." So he went off and he came back, and a lovely lady came in, a middle-aged lady, a Malaysian lady, and she said, "What are you planning to do?" I said, "I'm planning on bringing a photographic tour back to Borneo to photograph orangutans." Then she looked at me and she said, "How would you like a car and a driver and accommodation and all your meals for a week, and we will take you around?"
Wow.
I said, let me think about that for a while. I said, I suppose so. I suppose so. So we got a car and a driver, all of our accommodation, all of our meals for a week, on the understanding that we would go back and use her travel agency to run the tour.
Right. Wow.
So on the very first day, we set off and we came to this hotel, and it was a very posh hotel just out of Kota Kinabalu, maybe 30 minutes outside. And we stopped there for lunch, and we'd crossed this off our list because it would be too expensive for our people to stay at. But we stopped there for lunch, and they had a few local orangutans on the side of the mountain. My guide said, "You've paid your $10, he said. There's nobody watching. Get your tripod out." I said, okay. So I got my tripod out and I set it up, and I've got my long lens out. And as my back is turned, an orangutan climbed down off the side of the mountain, grabbed my tripod and ran away with it up the side of the mountain.
No way.
I thought, I'm being repaid for my dishonesty here.
Exactly.
This orangutan is probably employed by the government to do this. So then
knows the rules.
2 or 3 hotel staff had to chase this orangutan up the side of the mountain and retrieve my tripod.
But they did?
They did. So after that that tour, that recce run, we then organised a full-blown tour, and we met up with 2 of the most wonderful guides I've ever had on any tour.
Wow.
Prudente
Big
brothers,
call.
John Prudente and Seb Prudente. And Seb Prudente would be one of the number 1 photographers in the world, and probably the best orangutan photographer in the world. And he's led the National Geographic tours and the Richard Attenborough tours. So we were just blessed having him as our on-the-ground guide over there. And so we had the most wonderful times. We ended up taking 3 tours back to Borneo. And so it all started off with that $10 license, but I almost lost my tripod.
Yes. Oh, it would have been worth it if you did lose your tripod, though, I think.
Absolutely. That's right.
Oh, that's hilarious. Goodness me. And such a turnaround from here, pay us $1,000 to all of the subsequent experience instead.
Yes, so. I just couldn't believe my luck when they came back and they said that. And we just got into little out-of-the-way places, hideaways that nobody else would have ever got to. I can remember we drove several hours one night and it arrived at this very steep mountain, and there was a large cottage on the side of the mountain. And we got in there at about midnight, and we had a sandwich and went to bed. And I woke up in the morning and looked out, and here I was looking over dawn over the South China Sea. Not another human being anywhere. I went and banged on my assistant's door and I said, "Put your bathers on. We're going down to swim in the South China Sea at dawn." And we went down there, and it's just one of the most wonderful memories of my life because there wasn't another human being anywhere at all. And to think that you were swimming there. So, look, I have loved Borneo. It just felt to me like it was, in some ways, a bit like Bali was, say, 40 years ago. It was so fundamental, natural. The people were absolutely super friendly. The food was all sort of basic. Some of the accommodation was in the city was good, but out up the rivers where the animals were and so on, extremely basic, extremely. And so sleeping there in those little cottages alongside the Kintapatangang River at night time, you are laying in your bed and you can just hear the water gurgling along in the river. Then you can hear animal cries. You can hear, the cries of orangutans and birds, hornbills and so on, going through the jungle. And it is not hard to imagine that you are Tarzan.
Wow, wonderful.
You get. And so you
Yeah.
sleep there with your mosquito net and a candle for lights, and to hear all those beautiful, beautiful noises. And then on some occasions, because these guides were the best guides in the whole of Borneo, and we had our own animal spotters, we would be going up those rivers at midnight.
Oh, wow.
No other tourist boats went up there. We went up there at midnight with spotlights, and we spotted things. I
Amazing.
remember our animal spotter. These are tiny little dinghies, only about 4 or 5 people each dinghy, and he didn't have a spotlight. Actually, he had an infrared dot, and we would go along in the boat, and we would switch to an electric motor on the boat, and then he would put a red dot up into the dark jungle and put it on a branch or a leaf, and he'd say, "Focus 1 meter below my red dot and fire your flash," just with complete blackness. And so you'd look at this red dot and you could see nothing. But you do what he asked, 1 meter below his red dot, flash. Looked at the back of your camera, here is a python wound around a tree.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He could see. He could see, or he knew where they would be, or
I'd say he had an idea of where they were, but also he could see much better than we could. So we were
accustomed to know what to look for and stuff.
You were paying
Wow.
extra for these guides because they were so good. The number of photographs we were getting and the quality of photographs was so much better.
Well worth it by the sounds of it. Yeah. What an amazing experience. I can just imagine like creeping along the river and at midnight, and wow, it's amazing.
The other little story from Borneo that absolutely is so strong in my mind is we were in a small dinghy. All the upriver excursions are in tiny little dinghies, 4 to 6 people.
Right.
And we're going up the river and it's sunset and there's a canopy of trees over the top and it's becoming very, very dark. And what we heard from the right-hand bank was the bellowing of elephants, and a herd of elephants all bellowing.
Oh, wow.
And then from the left-hand bank, we heard the bellow of a single elephant, one that had been left behind. So our guide, John, put his finger up to his lips, said, shh, 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 nothing. We stopped. We turned off the electric motor. We were just hovering there in the water. And this bellowing from the right-hand bank and then the bellowing from the left-hand bank, the return calls. And then we saw the single elephant come in from the left, around about, say, 40 metres in front of us. And we've got our cameras up, ready to shoot, no flash. And here's this single elephant trying to go to its herd on the other side, and it got a third of the way across, and up beside this big elephant came a tiny little baby calf elephant with his mum. And the two of them are going along together in front of us. I honestly felt like I was in a dream.
Oh,
and
amazing.
The mother elephant goes across, the herd of elephant are bellowing out to it. She gets to the other side. It's very, very slippery and muddy, and she can't get up, and she's trying to clamber up, and she's slipping back, and the little baby is stuck in the mud. And then she gets a foothold, then she gets her trunk and puts it down behind her baby elephant and pulls that baby up. And they're both covered in mud, and they get up, and then they went and joined the main herd. And there was this absolute explosion of bellows of joy as they all just charged around, and you could hear the bush being crashed down as they went along, and they were doing this triumphant bellowing. It was like an orchestra reaching a crescendo.
Wow, that's incredible to have been able to witness that.
It was something very, very, very special. And interestingly enough, our guide, John, said to us, he said, I've been doing this for 20 years every week. I have never, ever seen that before.
Amazing experiences, hey? So Dale's had the good fortune to find himself in these, many of these really special experiences because of, I guess, taking some risks and being prepared to go off the beaten track and, follow the suggestions of locals and yeah. I love that story. Now, also Dale seems to have some funny things happen to him, and that's what's happening in the next story, which takes place in Greece. And for non-Aussies, I need to do a little translation because this phrase comes up a couple of times. So budgie smugglers is a phrase we use to describe like kind of tight-fitting small men's swimsuit, I guess. Look up budgie smugglers online if you want some more details. But this is Dale's experience in Naxos in Greece.
Well, I've co-led 2 tours to the Greek island, to the Cyclades, and I did that with a Greek photographer, Nick Yes. And so this was on my first trip. We were staying on the Greek island of Naxos, and Naxos is one of my favourite islands. It's not big and touristy like Santorini. It's far more laid back, casual. And I said to Nick, I'm going to go for a swim in the morning. He said, no, I'm having a sleep in. So I decided to go for a swim on my own. So I got up just after sunrise and I walked down to this bay on the island, and the water is crystal clear. It's calm. You can see right through the water. There's white sandy beaches. It was just beautiful. It was warm. It was maybe 25, 26 degrees. So I thought, this is great. Nobody on the beach. I got undressed. I just had my little Tony Abbott budgie smugglers on, and I put on my swimming goggles because I was going to go for a bit of a swim. I packed up all my clothes neatly on the beach, and there was nobody else around. So I dived into the water, and I swam a bit of breaststroke and a bit of overarm, and the water was crystal clear. I felt like I was in heaven. It was beautiful.
Sounds perfect.
I did my swim for maybe, 15 minutes, and I clambered out of the water, and my eyesight's not fantastic, but I thought I'll find my clothes. That's interesting. Where did I leave my clothes? Left, right, no clothes, no footprints. I look up and down. I thought, what's happened? There are no footprints. Nobody's stolen my clothes. Anyway, then I see a dog come bounding towards me, and it bounds right up to me and perches down, its face looking up at me, hopefully wants to play with me. It's panting, its tongue is hanging out of its mouth, its ears are perked up, and he's got this strange look on his face, this dog, like I've been playing a game. I then realised, or I thought, this dog has stolen my clothes. So I talked to him. I said, where are my clothes? So I started to jog next to him, and he started to run and then stop, come and play with me. I want him to lead me to the clothes. So we ran up and down a few times, and he thought this was great, having this guy in his budgie smugglers run up and down. And then I did notice a bit of a mound in the sand.
Oh, no.
And I went over there, and he starts to dig away at this mound. And what he's done is he's dug a hole. He's put all my clothes, including my glasses, in the hole, and covered the whole thing with sand.
That's a great game.
Good dog for finding my clothes. So I dug it up, and he thought I was good fun because I was digging like a dog.
Like a dog, yeah, great.
Covering all my clothes. I had to do a bit of work cleaning up my glasses. And anyway, I got dressed. The dog followed me back to our little hotel. Nick was still asleep in bed. Anyway, Nick said, how's the swim? I said, it was good. I said, have we got anything to give this dog? And he said, a muesli bar. So I went out, I gave the dog a muesli bar, and he ran off. Very, very happy.
So a very happy dog on Naxos. And, I think Dale actually has a habit of keeping both people and animals happy. as we will hear from this next story. So, as I mentioned, Dale has led or co-led many tours in many parts of the world, and I guess occasionally you get tour participants who, maybe they're not the favourite people that you want to be travelling with, and you have to deal with some issues, like in this story.
This particular event, I guess it resonates with a lot of tour leaders, because one of the things that you need to do in organising a tour is make sure that you keep as many people happy on the tour as possible. And one of the things I learned over many, many years is that on a tour, there will sometimes be somebody on that tour who will tend to cause a bit of a problem or a bit of discomfort for you and for other tour members. And it's really important to try to nip that in the bud. Because if you don't nip it in the bud, then it can spread throughout the group. So whether I was the leader or a co-leader, one of my roles has usually been to identify where the potential issue had come from and try to address that very quickly. That was one of my main roles. So here we were in Turkey, and this was my third tour of Turkey, and I was co-leader with John Harmon on that tour, and we had around about 14 people on the tour, and we had a 22-seat bus. So we had a couple of days in Istanbul, and we were setting off, and we had stopped for lunch at a lovely fish cafe on a wharf around about 2 or 3 hours from Istanbul. When the bus pulled up, people filed into the restaurant, and one of the participants, a lady, approached me and said, "Dale, I am most unhappy with the bus."
Ooh.
And I said, what seems to be the problem? And she said, "Well, the bus isn't big enough and it's not new enough."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, look, there are 14 of us and it's a 22-seater. And I said, and the bus is very clean. It's mechanically sound. It's probably 4 or 5 years old. We've got a very good driver." "No," she insisted, "it's not big enough. I need more space to spread out, and I'd like it to be newer as well." And I said, "Look, I'm afraid we just can't do anything about that." "Well," she said, "unless you can solve this problem, then I'm going to leave the tour, and I'd like a refund. I'd like my money back."
Wow.
So this lady went off into lunch into the fish cafe, and I thought, I've got a bit of a problem. So I spoke to our guide and I said, "Can you get on the phone to your head office and can you get me some details about another bus?" So 20 minutes, half an hour goes by. I've missed my lunch, and the guy comes to me and he says, "Look, we can get another bus. It's only 1 year old. It's a 44-seater. We'll have to, the driver goes with the bus, so we've got to dismiss this driver and employ a new driver." And he said, "But we can do that and we can get that bus here tomorrow." I said, "Right, and how much extra is this going to cost?" He said, "This is going to cost an additional $6,000. I said, "Okay." I wasn't really feeling hungry, even though I'd missed lunch, because I was churning inside. I was stressed. I was stressed because this had never happened to me before. So after lunch, I met up with the lady, and I had the guide there, and I looked at her and I said, "Look, I've made some inquiries. We can get another bus. We can dismiss this driver. We can get a 1 year old bus. It's a 40-seater for just 14 people." And she said, "Good, good." I said, "But it will cost an additional $6,000. And I looked her in the eye and I said, "And you will have to pay for it." She never blinked. She never blinked. She put her hand into her purse, pulled out her credit card.
No.
Said, "Do it." So we booked it up on her credit card.
Oh, my goodness.
We said goodbye to our lovely bus driver.
Oh, poor thing.
Next day, this shiny, gleaming silver bus arrives outside our hotel. we could have thrown a ball inside the bus and we had so much space.
I bet.
This particular lady, she set up camp at the rear of the bus. She established a bedroom and an office and various other things at the back of the bus. And we continued our journey in this ginormous bus.
This is insane.
And everybody lived happily ever after.
I'm still shaking my head at that story. But Dale said everyone lived happily ever after, but we actually continued our chat a bit further, and it turned out that that woman also had a couple of issues with some of the accommodation, which led us down a storytelling rabbit hole to one final story, which took place in Vietnam a few years back.
I do recall, this is going back a little bit, in 1997, my daughter and I, we rode our push bikes from Hanoi to Saigon, and we cycled into a town, and we looked in the Lonely Planet guide, and there was a hotel called the Movie Star Hotel. Now, that should have told me something, but I just thought, well, the Movie Star Hotel, it's got to be good.
Well, that's for me.
We cycled there, and there are little fairy lights twinkling all over the front. Oh, I said to my daughter, this is the place to be. So we went and booked into the Movie Star Hotel. So we shared a room. We each had a bed underneath our mosquito nets. My daughter got up and went to the bathroom, and when she came back, I said, "You've left the water running." And she said, "No, I didn't." I said, "You've left the water running. I can hear it running." "Dad, I didn't leave the water running." I got up, I went in. What I discovered was that the hotel room above us, the wastewater pipe came down along our wall and it finished around about 30 centimetres above our floor. So their wastewater was running all over our floor.
Oh, gross.
So it wasn't my daughter's fault at all.
No.
Anyway, that was life. So we went to sleep in the Movie Star Hotel, and some of the hotel staff at the Movie Star Hotel, which wasn't occupied by movie stars, they decided to have a very raucous card game in the room next door. This was the manager of the hotel and 3 or 4 of his mates.
Oh, dear.
And this card game went on, and there was shouting and yelling and cheering and guffawing till maybe 2 or 3 a.m.
Oof.
Next morning, I was in a grumpy mood.
Understandable.
So I went to the desk, and there's a very young man on the desk, and I said, "We're checking out." I said, "Can I have my passport, please?" He said, "The manager has your passport." I said, "Well, go and get my passport off the manager." He said, "I can't because he's been up all night playing cards and he's got your passport." I leant across the desk and I said, "Please go and tell your manager that I want my passport right now. Otherwise, I'll come into his room myself and I'll get my passport." So the poor young guy behind the desk went off and he came back and retrieved our 2 passports. And I, quite in an irritated fashion, I packed them up, packed up my bags, put my bags on the back of my bike and rode out of the hotel down the road, and didn't realise that in my impatience to get out of the hotel, I'd left all of our water bottles on the counter. But I couldn't go back after that.
No.
So the moral of this story is, I've learned over the years, I never ever book into any hotels that have got movie or stars in the title or the word paradise, because I've learned anything that calls itself the Paradise Hotel or the Paradise Inn is usually not paradise.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, good. I have noted these things. I feel like I probably never would book into the Movie Star Hotel, but in case I'm ever tempted, I will remember this story.
Right. Or if you do go to book in, go into the bathroom and check where the water pipe from the room above finishes.
There you go. Hotel booking tips. No movie star hotels, okay? I love that story too. So that's it for my stories from Dale Neill today. Thank you, Dale. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to chat. And I've just been giggling and smiling while I've been editing this episode as well. So thank you. And I hope everyone else that you have enjoyed listening to these tales. You can listen to some more from Dale in the previous episodes. The links will all be in the show notes, but just quickly, there was a couple of really great stories back in episode 178 about interesting plane passengers sitting next to you. It's one of my all-time favourite episodes because the stories are just amazing, just different. Also, we chatted about photography in episode 136, Photography for Travellers. And one of my another favourite episode, I have a lot of favourites obviously, episode 146, Travelling in Iran. I've still not got to Iran, but that episode was very convincing in reminding me that it's an amazing destination. You can also see more about Dale at his website, daleneill.com.au. Of course, don't forget, we have some groups where we chat about all things thoughtful travel. Come and join the Facebook group, just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook and ask to join. Or join our LinkedIn group. Just go to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn and you will find us there. All of this info and more will be at the show notes for this episode. They are at notaballerina.com/274. So as always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.